Anti-vinculin antibodies and post-infectious IBS is all the talk of the town in the SIBO world these days. But what does it mean exactly? And how do you treat it? And are you doomed to have SIBO forever if you have anti-vinculin antibodies? Is it true that higher levels of antibodies mean that it's a more difficult case to treat? Or is there maybe a little bit more to the story that is not talked about in the typical SIBO sphere? Well, as you might have guessed, the latter is going to be true, and I'm going to give you the lowdown on post-infectious IBS. Per our usual here on this channel, we're going to talk about the science first, the how, the why, the mechanism, and that way we can be better informed when we roll into the conversation of what we do for treatment. You can't figure out how to treat something if you don't understand it, right? So let's get into the how, the why, the mechanism of post-infectious IBS. But before we even get into that, I do want to pause here and say that I need to do a quick 20-second explainer of what SIBO is, because that's going to give us the framework of how we talk about this thing. So for those of you who might not know, in case there's a new kid on the block with us right now, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, is what happens when the microbiome is out of balance in a very particular way. So normally you should have the vast majority of your microbiome living in the colon, aka the large intestine, and you should have a much smaller microbiome in the small intestine scattered throughout here. And small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, as the name suggests, is when you have an overgrowth of bacteria or an increased quantity of bacteria in the small bowel where they frankly do not belong. So that being said, now that we know what SIBO is and have a way to conceptualize it, I also want to lead into this conversation by saying, if you think about how digestion works, right? Food comes in this hole and out this hole. There should be a flow. There should be a current to the contents of your digestive tube. You should be flowing, so to speak, from mouth to anus and never the other direction. And ideally, we also don't want there to be a lot of stagnation or like stalling, so to speak, in any one area. And I am a firm believer that that is what SIBO actually is that you get a stalling or a stagnation or a lack of movement, a lack of motility in the small bowel, and that allows the microbes to overgrow and populate that area more than they normally would. So you can trace this back. So there's, post-infectious IBS, we're kind of really talking about SIBO. And when we talk about SIBO, we're really kind of talking about poor motility and stagnation. And that's going to give us the framework we need to talk about PI-IBS. So what ends up happening is this would happen with food poisoning specifically. I want to mention this because I've had several people work with me or want to work with me over the years, and they are convinced that they have post-infectious IBS, but it's from a different cause. Like somebody who had giardia or a parasite, and they think that they have post-infectious IBS just because they had an infection. That is actually not the case. Our current understanding of post-infectious IBS right now in 2024 is that there are bacteria, a handful such as Campylobacter, that when you get the food poisoning with this bacteria, that can instigate what we're talking about here. So if you've had a parasite or a worm or a traveler's diarrhea or some other type of infection or C. diff, that is actually not what we're talking about here. Now, some of the tools that I share later on in the video could still very well help you, but I just want to let you know that you probably won't have like anti-vinculin antibodies and post-infectious IBS because of that. Now, so what happens basically is when you get food poisoning, you are ingesting this bad bacteria, let's say Campylobacter, and it is making a toxin. In this case, there's the cytolethal distending toxin that is made by some of these bacteria like Campylobacter. And it's that bacteria and that toxin that instigate the whole show. So in a normal situation, anybody who gets food poisoning, their body is going to respond to that, right? It doesn't matter who you are. If you get Campylobacter food poisoning, you are probably going to be puking or having diarrhea or both, and your immune system is going to rev up and try to fight this infection for you. And those are all really good things. You want to get that microbe out of your body, you want to get that toxin out of your body, and you want to fight whatever is remaining in your body. And what happens most of the time is that your immune system is revved up and fighting this battle for you as long as the enemy is present. But then when the enemy is gone, when you have purged, either top or bottom, when you have purged all of that bacteria and all of that toxin out of your body, what should normally happen is the immune system goes, cool, my job is done, my work is done, I can calm back down and go back to my resting baseline. We did it, we conquered it. That's normal. What happens with post-infectious IBS is that you're fighting the true bad guy, the bacteria and the toxin, and the immune system, for whatever reason, looks at the bad thing, in this case the toxin, and says, yes, I know this is bad and I need to get it. But then the immune system goes, wait a minute. This thing over here looks very similar to this thing over here. Well, I know this is bad, so I'd better attack this too. It's kind of like the immune system is saying, I'd better cross my T's and dot my I's and make sure I'm doing a really, really good job. The unfortunate thing is the thing over here that looks similar to the bacterial toxin is vinculin, a protein on the neurons of your intestines. So kind of anatomically, let's think about how this is going to look. So again, here's your gut tube. I've gone ahead and zoomed in on one segment of the small intestine. So here's the epithelial cells. So this is the gut lining. This is what we would talk about when we're talking about leaky gut and healing the gut. And then on one side of that fence, so to speak, are going to be food particles, bacteria, mucus, right? This is all of the contents of your gut, the bacteria, the food, the antigens, whatever, and then the mucus is protecting you. Then you've got the gut lining itself. Those are the epithelial cells that are absorbing all of your nutrients and basically serving as a picket fence between you and the outside world. Underneath that, you have the mucosa and submucosa, and you have neurons. Wow, this is a really bad neuron, actually. Apologies. Apologies to my neuroanatomy professors from years ago. That'll have to do. So you have neurons that live in this layer underneath the epithelial cells, and they are communicating with the muscles and the tissues in that area so that you can contract and relax the muscles in a rhythmical fashion. So I guess the better way to depict this is, muscle kind of throughout, and then the nerves are somewhere in between. You also, in this region, have immune cells, and those immune system cells are just hanging out, waiting for stuff to get weird, and they are guarding you from any weirdness from within. So if there's a bacteria that gets through, or a food antigen that gets through, or something unwanted, your immune system is right there ready to pounce. And again, this is great when you have food poisoning. But what ends up happening with post-infectious IBS is that there's the protein vinculin that, let's say that protein lives right here on the nerve. Well, your immune system sees that vinculin and sees the bad guy in your gut and thinks that they are the same. So then the immune system starts to take an interest in vinculin and starts to target it and attack it. And there you have anti-vinculin antibodies. It's the immune system attacking vinculin, which is this protein on the neurons that control motility. And there we have why post-infectious IBS can cause poor motility and can cause SIBO for people, because it's your immune system trying its best to protect you. It's trying to make sure that it gets all of the enemies and protects you. And it did. It just went one step too far, and it attacked part of your own body in the process. And as you continue to attack this part of your body, your motility suffers greatly. And that's where people start to get SIBO and this stagnation and dysmotility problem. But here's the thing, my little chili babies. You're not here because you want a deep understanding of post-infectious IBS. You're here because you want to feel better. You are a human being with symptoms that are uncomfortable or painful or unpleasant, and you just want to feel better. You're here searching for an answer to the question of, how can I fix what is broken? And how can I finally sweep my dang bacteria into my dang colon where they belong so that they're not making me miserable and bloated? So without further ado, let's get into what you would do should you be diagnosed with post-infectious IBS. And I will pause here and say, if we want to think of it really root causally, we would get in a time machine and we would go back and tell you not to eat the hot dog that gave you food poisoning. But assuming that none of us have a time machine, right? Like, do you have a time machine? Invite me. I want to go. I want to travel in the future and read all of the cool microbiome papers. Take me with you. Anyway, if you have a time machine, comment down below and we'll go for a ride together, okay? But shy of that, we don't have a time machine and we can't undo the food poisoning. We're stuck here in the current day. But that's okay, because what we can do is that we can start to rehabilitate these neurons that have been beat up by your immune system, possibly for quite some time. Now, one of the ways we can do this is with prokinetics. These are going to be motility agents. They're not antidiarrheals and they're not laxatives, so they're not going to speed you up or slow you down intrinsically, but they encourage proper motility. That's the best way you can think of them. Now, as a lot of you might know, I send little tester baggies to all of my FODMAP Freedom students, and I have them do what I call prokinetic speed dating. My students are just getting started with that right now for the April class of FODMAP Freedom, and it's really interesting to watch already who lands on what. But basically, I send my students a 1-week supply of about 9 or 10 different herbal prokinetics, and I have them try them one at a time until they find one that works or until they find their favorite. And then we have them continue that at least for a couple of months while we're working on all of the other foundational stuff. So herbal prokinetics, absolutely a huge thing in this world. And frankly, some people do well with the prescription prokinetics too. I have somebody right now who's considering doing a prescription prokinetic, and we were talking about why that might be a good thing for her. So really stimulating your motility with a prokinetic can be very helpful for this crowd. I will make a note of this, and I have a video all about this if you want to check it out. I think that run-of-the-mill IBS SIBO stuff calls for a prokinetic for maybe 6 months to a year. Post-infectious IBS, people probably need more aggressive prokinetic support and prolonged prokinetic support, more in like several years kind of time frame, as opposed to months or perhaps a year. So that's a consideration. And it's not to say that herbs wouldn't work for those people, it's just that you might want to beef up the dose a little bit, and you would certainly want to take a prokinetic for longer than the run-of-the-mill IBS SIBO person. So prokinetics being one. But here's the thing, right? Prokinetics are stimulating the nerves to do their job, and they're stimulating motility, but they're not necessarily healing the nerves. They're not nutritive. They're not nurturing the nerves in and of themselves, right? So how do we actually promote the health of these nerves? Well, a couple of things come to mind, for me at least. Nutrition is absolutely critical here. I will tell you, neurons get royally pissed off if you are deficient in any vitamin or mineral, particularly B vitamins, but I don't want to limit you to just that. And I will say here too, it is much more worthwhile to ensure that you're getting these vitamins and minerals through your food rather than a supplement. So if you're thinking, oh, cool, I'll just go buy a multivitamin or a B complex, I don't know if that's really going to help, to be truthful. But nutrition, vitamins, minerals, adequate calories, adequate protein, adequate dietary fat, all of those things are really tremendous for healing the nervous system. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or a tumor or something like this. When you want neurons to be healthy, they need adequate nutrition. Another consideration is blood sugar. If you have big blood sugar swings, up or down or both ways, that is going to tick off any neuron in your body. So making sure that you are eating balanced meals with not too much sugar, not too many treats, really being mindful of the way you eat and stabilizing your blood sugar is another huge, huge part of treating post-infectious IBS. Although I would hesitate to use the word treating in this case, because in my mind, we're building you a healthy body. We're not even treating this in a weird way. But I digress. So healthy nutrition and blood sugar, top of the list. There are also some herbs that are known to be very nutritive and nurturing for the nervous system specifically. So lion's mane mushroom is famous in this regard, and it's gaining some traction in the SIBO world. And I have seen a lot of my students fall in love with lion's mane. That is one of the 10 herbal prokinetics that I send to them. And I teach my students that I think that it's kind of halfway between being a true prokinetic and just something that heals the neurons. So lion's mane mushroom, you could get it in capsules or powder. That is really healing for this. And then there are other wonderful herbs, everything ranging from nervine herbs like milky oat and lavender and St. John's wort up to perhaps adaptogens, which are wonderful for the nervous system. Maybe things that would typically be thought of as sleep aids like valerian. There are a lot of herbs that can help regulate and heal the nervous system. And again, many of which fall under that umbrella of nervine herbs. But I would say that that is another great strategy for healing nerves. Another factor is how are you stimulating those nerves? And keep in mind, this is all connected. So I drew the gut, right? Well, here, above all of that is your brain, and the vagus nerve coming out of your brainstem innervates or controls all of your gut. And the vagus nerve projections go and feed into and stimulate these enteric neurons. So think about things that are good for the vagus nerve and good for your brain. Things like proper sleep and a good sleep hygiene and sleep schedule. Waking up at the same time every day, going to sleep around the same time every day, having a good circadian rhythm. Exercise, getting sunlight on your face during the daylight hours. Even just movement outside of exercise, stretching or yoga. These things are going to stimulate your central nervous system in a different way and promote health and healing of the nervous system and balance in the nervous system, which is wonderful for the vagus nerve, and then by proxy is going to be wonderful for your enteric nervous system. So when in doubt, take care of your nervous system. Again, I can't overemphasize sleep, stress, and nutrition in regards to this, but there is absolutely so much that can be done for post-infectious IBS. No, you are not doomed if you have this. No, it is not that much more difficult to treat than other cases of SIBO or other cases of IBS. Just do what you've got to do. Get these ducks in a row. Work on the sleep, the stress, the nutrition, the vitamins and minerals, stimulating your brain, moving your body, getting sunlight on your face. And I think that you will be pleasantly surprised to see that these neurons can recuperate and function perfectly well as you are hoping that they will. This was the part of the video where I was going to do an outro, but before I do the outro, I had one more to throw in there. Keep in mind that part of the kerfuffle that's happening here is that your immune system is erroneously attacking part of your body. So it's an autoimmune thing that's going on. So there's also room at this conversation to talk about things that are good for autoimmunity. So anti-inflammatory agents, perhaps like glutathione, things like vitamin D and vitamin A, those sorts of things are going to be really great for this. And of course, modulating and working on the microbiota, which is then going to change the stimulation that the immune system receives and can either calm it down or rev it up, one or the other. So continue working on your microbiome, as I know many of you already are doing. Think about things like vitamin A, vitamin D, perhaps glutathione, perhaps other anti-inflammatories like curcumin and resveratrol and sulforaphane. But that is the last thing I wanted to throw in there for the treatment of post-infectious IBS. As you can see, it is a sprawling topic, but hopefully I was able to summarize it concisely here in this video. Now for a little bit of show and tell. This is what I was talking about that I do with my students and my patients. So in this bigger Ziploc bag, there are little tiny Ziploc bags with 1 week supplies of each of the different herbal prokinetics. I also send everybody some ox bile and 2 different doses of betaine HCl to try out as well, but that's a topic for another day. But I send them this little packet with a book and some other stuff in the beginning of FODMAP Freedom, and then part of what they do starting in Module 4 is that they start speed dating these prokinetics. And what I'm finding is that there's no rhyme or reason to it. I thought for sure, the people with constipation will all fall in love with one product and the people with diarrhea will fall in love with another product. That is not what happens. It is a complete and total crapshoot which one people fall in love with. Statistically speaking, I can tell you which one comes out on top more often than not. I actually have a whole YouTube video about that here on this channel. I posted it right around the new year this year in 2024. It was like January 2nd. So you could go check that out if you want all of the statistics on that. But this has been a real game changer for my IBS and SIBO patients. And what I've told them, and I will tell you the same, is that in my mind, the prokinetics don't heal you per se. Really thinking about healing the neurons and calming down the inflammation is what's going to heal these people. So things like nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement, sunlight, those are the things that really heal you. But what happens with these is that it's a nice little cheat code to help you feel better quicker than you otherwise would, right? Like working on sleep and stress and nutrition can take months, if not years, to really dial in, versus I can get you feeling better in a matter of weeks with a prokinetic. So I don't think that prokinetics are going to heal the world if they're SIBO, but I do think that they are a fun, useful, very effective, very doable cheat code for most of us. And if you have any desire to find the right prokinetic for you and do my prokinetic speed dating, I would encourage you to check out FODMAP Freedom. We will be enrolling again in August, so that will be the last go around for this calendar year, and then we'll pick it back up again in 2025, believe it or not. But if you want to do the prokinetic speed dating and you want me to mail you one of these kits in the mail, check out FODMAP Freedom, and I would be delighted and just so honored to help you inside FODMAP Freedom come August. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, click the like button, and leave a comment down below with the videos that you would like to see me do next. Doing all of those really helps support the channel and support my efforts in making as many videos as possible for you guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.